Buzzing. Naomi reached for her phone on the bedside table, pressed it to her ear, and asked in a hoarse voice, "It's the middle of the night. What's going on?" Alice cried on the other end, "Naomi, I had a fight with Miles." Naomi impatiently clicked her tongue, "Don't you guys fight all the time?" Alice sobbed loudly, "This time it's different. He kicked me out." "What?" Naomi instantly woke up, sitting up and turning on the bedside lamp. The wall clock showed it was 2:15 in the morning. "Where are you now?" Naomi asked. Alice replied, "I'm outside the gate of his residential area. I want to go to a hotel, but I haven't been able to find a cab. It's raining, and his place is too remote. Naomi, can you come and pick me up? I'm sorry, you're the only friend I have. I can only trouble you." "Whoa." Naomi, reluctantly putting on clothes, said, All right. No need to be polite between friends. I'll be right there. Stay safe." Half an hour later, Naomi picked up Alice. Initially, she thought Alice's "kicked out" was an exaggeration. Now seeing Alice in a drenched nightgown, barefoot with slippers, and a large suitcase by her side, she couldn't help but gasp, "He really kicked you out?" Alice, continuously sniffing, choked, "He packed my luggage. I tried to stop him and apologize, but it didn't work. After he finished packing, he pushed me out the door. He's so heartless." Naomi, speechless, urged Alice to get in the car. Under the warm breeze, Alice's pale face gradually regained some color as they drove. Naomi noticed her continuous tears but refrained from asking further questions. She stepped on the gas and drove away. The two settled in at home, and it was almost 4 o'clock. Naomi cooked a bowl of ginger soup for Alice and asked, "Tell me, what happened?" Alice started crying again. "Last night, he was working overtime. I kindly brought him supper, but I saw him being very intimate with a female colleague. When I asked a few more questions after we got home, we ended up quarreling." Naomi, considering the 50-minute drive between Miles' workplace and residence, rolled her eyes at Alice's effort to deliver supper. "He's not the first time flirting with female colleagues." Alice wiped her tears. "He flirts with several girls, but I'm not sure if they crossed any boundaries." Naomi asked, "How do you know?" Alice said, "I secretly checked his phone. I called him a smooth talker during our argument, and he found out." "So, he kicked you out because he found out?" Naomi confirmed. Alice nodded, wiped her tears with 2 pieces of tissue, and sniffled, "I'm his fiancé. We've met each other's parents. Why can't I check his phone? I don't mind him checking mine. If there's no issue, it's my fault for being suspicious. But I found a problem. What right does he have to pick on my flaws? Why is he like this? Woo." Unable to bear it any longer, Naomi decided to do a good deed. "Alice, did you just discover that Miles has issues?" Naomi asked. Alice stared with wide eyes, looking innocent. "What do you mean by that?" After a final internal struggle, Naomi decided to speak. "About Miles, I wanted to talk to you a long time ago, but I felt it wasn't appropriate, especially since you've decided to be with him and spend your life together. But now that things have come to this point, as a friend, there are some things I can't keep silent about." Naomi paused, carefully choosing her words. "Alice, back when he asked you to resign, did you think that was an expression of love? When he said he would support you for a lifetime, were you moved? He always prevents you from meeting friends. Do you believe it's out of concern for you? By not letting you enter his circle, do you think it's because he's worried about bothering you?" Alice hesitated and nodded, whispering, "You know me, I don't like interacting with strangers. During the time I resigned to take care of him, I actually felt comfortable." Naomi was exasperated. No one truly likes going to work, and no one truly enjoys socializing. But as a normal member of society, these are experiences we must go through. "Alice, don't you realize that Miles is keeping you confined, domesticating you?" Alice froze. Naomi continued, "You isolate yourself, revolving around him, refusing to engage with the outside world, just wanting to rely on Miles. In the future, you'll completely lose your ability to survive, transitioning from dependence to attachment. Now you're not even married, and he can kick you out if he's unhappy. Imagine what it will be like after you're married. He won't be able to get rid of you even if he wants to because you won't be able to live without him. So, no matter how outrageous his actions, you'll have to compromise and concede endlessly. Have you thought about that kind of life?" Alice closed her eyes in pain. Naomi knew she was still hesitating, but she had said what needed to be said. She decided to be straightforward. She patted Alice's shoulder and said, "Alice, be a bit more decisive. Don't just listen to him. Tomorrow, go out and find a job. Alice hesitated. I promised Miles that I'd focus on being a homemaker while he takes care of external matters. Let me think about it, Naomi. Can you accommodate me for a few more days? You're the only friend I have left here. Naomi was frustrated but sighed deeply. Naomi and Alice both thought Miles would show up the next day, but as evening approached, there was no sign of him, not even a call or a message. Alice was deeply saddened, feeling certain that Miles must be out with another woman. Naomi strongly discouraged her from calling him. On the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, Alice stayed at Naomi's place for a whole week, and still, there was no message from Miles. Observing Alice's distraught state, Naomi suddenly understood Miles' intention. He wanted Alice to voluntarily return. This was his method of taming. If Alice returned on her own this time, the last bit of her wildness would be extinguished. Then, no matter how he scolded or mistreated her, as long as she remembered that even if she left home, Miles wouldn't yield, she would have no choice but to endure. At the moment, Alice was too preoccupied with her sorrow, probably not considering this deeper layer. To prevent Alice from following the path Miles, the scoundrel, had set for her, Naomi decided to take action and push Alice out. However, Alice had been out of work for a long time. Her educational background was not outstanding, and her resume lacked highlights. In the current job market, it was challenging to find a good job. After some effort and leveraging her connections, Naomi managed to arrange an administrative position for Alice through a familiar old client. The job had regular hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., weekends off, and the salary was not high, but it was enough for Alice to support herself. Alice didn't want to go to work, but her expenses had previously been covered by Miles, and she had very little money on hand. Staying in Naomi's spare room was already a significant favor, and she couldn't ask for more money. Unsure when Miles would come to pick her up, and with limited options, she reluctantly accepted the job. Watching Alice finally step out, Naomi felt a sense of relief. Alice had been under Miles' PUA tactics for too long, but Naomi believed that as long as Alice could have more contact with the outside world, rediscover her own value, her mind would eventually clear. In the blink of an eye, Alice worked for a month. Although she appeared tired, her mental state improved, at least no longer haunted by uncertainties when Miles was mentioned. One day, to celebrate Alice smoothly passing her probation period, Naomi treated her to a buffet. After the meal, the two chatted and laughed on their way back, only to encounter Miles at the entrance of the residential area. Alice's smile froze, and she whispered, "Miles." Miles approached, coldly saying, "As my fiancé, being away from home for over a month, is that appropriate?" Naomi retorted, "Didn't you kick her out?" Miles replied, "I kicked her out, but wouldn't she come back on her own? Do I have to find a sedan chair to carry her back? In the future, when we're married, if we argue, will she just run away? How will we live? I knew it was your rotten idea behind all this. You can't find a partner at your age, so you're especially jealous when your friends are happier than you, right?" Naomi was furious, "Are you out of your mind?" Miles retorted, "You're the one with issues. What normal woman at your age doesn't get married? You know your own situation. Let me tell you, you better know your place. If you keep meddling in my relationship with Alice, I'll make you regret it. Alice is simple and kind. She can't adapt to this complicated society without me. Only I can sincerely treat her well. You better not harm her." Naomi snapped back, "Haha, but Alice has a job now, and she'd passed her probation on her own. If you really care about her as you say, give her a chance to see if she can adapt to this society, unless you want to control her." The atmosphere instantly became tense. Miles and Naomi both looked at Alice. Alice glanced around, then whispered, "Miles, this job is not difficult or tiring. My colleagues are very nice to me. Let me work for now, being alone at home during the day is really boring. I can quit after we get married." Miles coldly snorted, "If you're willing to work, go ahead. Suffer on your own. Hurry up and come back home with me." Alice cheerfully walked to Miles' side and said to Naomi, "Naomi, sorry for bothering you for so long. I'm moving back today. Don't worry, I'll remember what you said." Naomi stared dumbfoundedly as Alice linked arms with Miles. Her mind was filled with images of alpacas, and dust seemed to be swirling around. Not long after they left, Miles abruptly turned back, pointed harshly at Naomi, and then continued walking with Alice. Naomi found Miles' threatening behavior laughable and didn't take it seriously. Everyone has their own fate, and she had done her best for Alice. After Alice moved out, Naomi resumed her usual rhythm of life, dedicating all her time and energy to work. On weekends, she, as usual, went to the office to work overtime. When she arrived, her colleagues were all looking at her strangely, creating an awkward atmosphere. Naomi didn't pay much attention and was focused on solving a new issue raised by the client the night before. She was about to discuss it with colleagues from the construction department when she ran into the executive assistant, who told her to visit the CEO's office. In the CEO's office, Naomi saw a plump, unfamiliar woman. The CEO seemed familiar with her and hastily found an excuse to leave, leaving the office to Naomi and the woman. Not liking the woman's scrutinizing gaze, Naomi asked, "May I ask what you're here for? We seem not to know each other." The woman sneered, "You might not know me, but you know my husband. How could you forget so quickly who recommended you to survive here?" Naomi's heart skipped a beat, a ringing started in her ears. She opened her mouth, but it felt like something was blocking her throat, and she couldn't speak. Since joining this company, she had pushed aside all distractions and invested herself entirely. In the accumulating sense of achievement day by day, she gradually forgot about a person and an incident, her affair with Caleb, the manager from her previous company. Back then, she had excelled in her previous company, stood out, and walked up to Caleb. They admired each other from their first meeting, and in their increasingly frequent interactions, mutual affection blossomed. They seemed like people who had known each other for a long time, always having endless conversations. Caleb's fatal attraction made her cross moral boundaries. Even knowing Caleb had a family, she recklessly entered a relationship with him. Looking back now, that time was still the happiest period in the first half of her life. She never took money from Caleb, deceiving herself into believing they were in a purely loving relationship, so she could be at peace with herself. Originally, she didn't dare to hope for a lasting relationship. However, as their love deepened, feelings of dissatisfaction began to creep in. At this point, Caleb suddenly hit the brakes and proposed a breakup. Because his wife had finished her overseas stay and returned, Naomi was left in despair. Caleb had no lingering attachment, and the parting gift he gave her was a platform she couldn't reach on her own, and a career she couldn't achieve by herself. Recalling the past felt like another lifetime. Naomi stood before Caleb's wife, Sadie, tears welling in her eyes. Sadie spoke, "Do you know? Caleb once mentioned divorce to me, but due to property division issues, he gave up on it. At that time, I didn't know the reason. Now I think it was because of you. He might still remember you, so I won't allow you to enter his sight again." Naomi looked up, holding back her tears. "We separated thoroughly, and we've never been in contact." Sadie said, "Resign on your own. Leave his circle." Naomi replied, "That's impossible. I'm doing well here. I've put all my efforts into every project." Sadie sneered, "Naomi, I've managed a company too. Many jobs are like assembly line work, don't require exceptionally talented people, but every company raises the bar, selecting more outstanding individuals. Look at your colleagues, what backgrounds, what education. Without Caleb, you wouldn't even qualify to put in efforts here, and these feelings of accomplishment aren't meant for you. Besides, I'll tell you, you won't find a job in this industry in this city again. I've been around for so many years, and with my connections, blacklisting you is just a matter of a word." A chill ran down Naomi's spine. Suddenly, she remembered something. "How did you find out about me? How did you come here?" Sadie smiled brightly, revealing a malicious delight. "A friend named Miles found me. He told me about your affair with Caleb." Naomi felt a sharp pain in her chest, trembling slightly. When she was with Caleb, they hadn't bought a house yet. Alice still had a job, and she hadn't moved in with Miles. They were living together in a shared rental. One evening, Caleb walked her home, and they were embracing downstairs, coincidentally seen by Alice. Alice, curious, asked about it, and Naomi, not good at lying, had to tell her the truth. Because it was significant, she begged Alice to keep it a secret, and Alice swore an oath to keep it confidential. Unexpectedly, Alice, in her eagerness to please Miles, treated this secret as gossip and spread it around. Alice had no idea about all this. One day, she came crying to Naomi, saying she was frustrated and troubled. Through sobs, Alice explained, "Naomi, I resigned. Because I'm pregnant. Miles said we should have a wedding as soon as possible. It was a good thing, but now his family doesn't want to give a dowry or add my name to the property deed. My parents refused to compromise, and everything is at a standstill. Miles said if my family continues to be troublesome, he won't marry me. He even asked me to abort the child." Sob, "What should I do?" Naomi was silent for a moment, then bluntly said, "Then your family should stop being troublesome. You weren't worth much from the beginning." Without hesitation, she pushed Alice out the door and slammed it shut. She didn't want to waste any more effort on this foolish person. The foolishness of this person not only harmed herself, but also implicated everyone around her who wanted to help. Naomi, forced and helpless, went through the resignation process without receiving any compensation. She attempted to apply for jobs, but even small companies in the same industry refused to grant her an interview. Sadie had indeed taken serious actions, it wasn't an empty threat. Feeling lost and uncertain about her future, Naomi didn't know what to do next. She lacked skills in other areas and only had experience in this industry. With a monthly mortgage to pay and living expenses, her savings couldn't sustain her for long. In despair, she made a decision to leave, to seek new opportunities. She put her house up for sale, spending her days at home, listlessly showing the property to potential buyers and packing her belongings. One day, she received an unexpected call from Caleb. Naomi, upon hearing that familiar voice, felt a surge of grievances. The emotions she had suppressed beneath her busy work schedule erupted. She cried uncontrollably into the phone, incoherently recounting her experiences. Caleb sighed and apologized repeatedly, concluding with, "Naomi, stay. I'll take care of you." Naomi's sorrow came to an abrupt halt, and an uncomfortable feeling crept into her heart. "Take care of me? How do you plan to take care of me?" Caleb cleared his throat. "You won't have to work. Do whatever you like every day. I'll pay off your mortgage and give you an allowance. Just I can't get a divorce. But, you know, my wife and I haven't had feelings for each other for a long time. As long as we're careful not to be discovered by her, everything will be fine." A peculiar discomfort swirled in Naomi's heart. "You want to keep me as a mistress? How charming." She suddenly realized that her so-called love was even inferior to the complicated relationship between Miles and Alice. At least, while turning Alice into a dependent, Miles was willing to give her a legitimate status. Meanwhile, Naomi was only worthy of a concealed maintenance arrangement. She had never felt so ironic. For her pretentious nobility, for the inexplicable superiority she felt in front of Alice, for her attempts to interpret the past as an unattainable true love. It was all a farce, her own hypocrisy and affectation. She truly should leave, break away from everything she gained relying on a man, truly become independent, and be worthy of everything she once said to Alice. She deliberately forgot that deeply emotional past, a form of self-numbing. She thought she could prove herself worthy of her present through effort, merely because she was evading the fact that she had always clung to a man. Because of a pair of despicable men and women, forcing her to confront this page of an unforgivable history, she felt it was destiny. After selling the house, Naomi left for a distant city with all her belongings. Shortly after, she saw on social media that Alice and Miles had gotten married. Alice, visibly pregnant, looked genuinely happy. Naomi, with a blank expression, blocked her from her contacts. Once, they were such close friends. Naomi could confide in Alice about unspeakable secrets, and Alice could seek help from her in the toughest times. They were, in a sense, fellow travelers. But now, they each went their separate ways, perhaps both heading towards a better future.